Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast for episode 109. Today we're talking about the biggest thing in gaming since Spotlight Games started, a game called Palworld. I'm going to review The Last of Us Remastered 2. We're going to react to last week's Xbox Developer Direct, and we have a bit of a surprise for you. My sweet dumpster boy came and lost internet, so instead we are joined by one of the most handsome men I know. I don't have a nickname for him off the top of my head, but his name is Evan Brandonizio. Evan Brando, welcome to the show. How are you, buddy?
Happy to be here. Very, very grateful to announce that I've defeated Cayman in a trial by combat to become the new official co-host of the Spotlight Games pod.
It happened.
Very, very grateful to be here for that.
Good. I'm realizing now, because I'm doing this in a new way, the little recording tag is on the top of the screen. Oh. Don't like that. I think I'm just gonna have to live with it.
Yeah, that guy, this gentleman.
Yeah, this little top left guy.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
This will be something that I solve for next week. Evan, we have so many fun things to talk about, but before we do that, let's do some housekeeping. We have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live, especially a day like today when we go live a little late, so you can be part of the conversation. Evan, what a glorious day. There wasn't a moment of my day where I expected to have you on the podcast, so I'm just like excited that we're
there was no moments in my day where I was expecting to come guest on this podcast.
A little behind the scenes for our audience. We as you normally know, Cayman, the co-host, lost his internet, and so I texted Evan about 90 seconds ago and was like,
it was an insane, like, at the finish line. You were like, are you free at 8? And I was like, tonight?
And he was, as evidenced by what's happening right here today, right now. Evan, we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Palworld. We're going to be talking about The Last of Us, but I want to start the show with how we always start our shows here on Spotlight Games, with what we've been playing. What have you been playing, Doggy Dog?
So this is a game that I finally dove into after like months, and it might even have encroached into years plural territory of people recommending me this game, and not recommending in a way that's like, I'm sure you've done this both ways, where like not just, oh, you should play this. This is an all-time game. This is like a great game, but in the way that's like, you should play this specifically because I know you, I know your tastes, I know the things you like in games, and like I'm recommending it specifically for you.
Oh, me, Patrick.
Well, this was to Evan.
This was to Evan.
You're Evan in this scenario.
Great.
Yeah. And that's a game called Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I've never played. I played a little bit of Yakuza 0, but by and large, I'm not that familiar with the series.
Okay.
But I just got enough recommendations for this game, and like right away, I was like, "All right, I get what you're saying. I get it."
Yeah.
Because it's very goofy, as the Yakuza games kind of are, but there's a sincerity to them. I think like it's high drama, high stakes, things like that. A little campy. Obviously, there's like the infamous like mini games and things like that, but they never really like wink about it. Really, they're never like, oh, this happens,
Yeah.
And I find that like sincerity is really what sells it. And like the main character of this game is so like, he's just like me for real, because he's like I learned everything I know about courage and being a hero from marathoning Dragon Quest games, and it's like, hey. Yeah, man, I'm here for that escape.
That hits close to home.
Sure, it does.
I'm actually pretty bummed that Cayman isn't here because it's one of his favorite games of all time, and he has been on this journey to platinum Skyrim before Friday, before he can start the sequel of
the Infinite Wealth,
Infinite Wealth sequel, and he was going to give us an update on his Skyrim platinum journey. But also, so I played Like a Dragon because Cayman really wanted me to play Like a Dragon. It's won Golden Beefies here at the Spotlight Games in years past.
It's very largely decorated for sure.
And I the beef community really big on Yakuza.
A lot of buzz around Like a Dragon.
Yeah, yeah. And I just, for whatever reason, it didn't click for me. It was my first Yakuza game. Not my first run-in with the Yakuza. I watched the final season of True Blood, everybody. But it just like didn't click for me. But I'm reading reviews for the new Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I'm hearing buzz.
Insanely high praise for them.
It's got me hyped. Like it has this new Animal Crossing-esque feature. Or
really?
game mode rather, because it takes place in Hawaii. Not
yes, I hear they handle
Japan.
the narrative of Hawaii like very well. Of like, you know, they have a lot to say about like kind of the tourism market being out of control, kind of like the lack of housing, and like the kind of the overall fucked state of Hawaii right now.
But cool. Yeah, so there's like a whole mode where there's like an island that you get that is straight up Animal Crossing. Like you are building buildings, your farm, like it's, people are saying it's just like 3D, not 3D, like AAA Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all of those kinds of things get me hyped about Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which I might be playing. Also, want to say hi to Cognitive Clips in the chat, and also Bennett UA in the chat, who says, "Who is that lurking in the dark corner behind Evan? Don't look behind you, Evan." It's the dumpster boy.
It's the he's just, his eyes just glow.
Oh, that would be frightening if there was actually.
That's my sleep paralysis demon.
Yeah,
it's the dumpster boy.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I've never had a sleep paralysis demon, but I think if I did, it would also be the dumpster boy. Cole House Jr. in the chat. LMAO. Hi guys. Hey Terry. How are you?
What up?
So yeah, here's my question to you, Evan, about Yakuza Like a Dragon. Obviously, you've not finished the game yet. You've just started playing.
I've barely scratched the surface. I'm maybe 4 hours in.
But do you think if I were to ballpark it, I would guess that I put in around 4 hours before I bailed. Do you think I should go back, or do you think I should just look forward to Infinite Wealth?
I feel like, I mean, I don't know the series that well, right? I feel like if you don't like, I feel like I would go back, particularly because it's on Game Pass. I feel like I would probably go back and give Like a Dragon another shot before you say, well, I'm going to go watch the sequel. Because it would be weird to be like, you know, I really didn't like Avatar, but I can't wait for The Way of Water.
But
actually, that's a bad example. That's a bad example. Because Avatar Way of Water is great, actually.
A lot better than the prequel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To the point where we're calling the original the prequel.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
I'm surprised it's clicking for me for what it's worth, because I normally do not really love turn-based RPGs. Like there's a few. Yeah. I mean, there's a few standouts like the Paper Mario series. I love Chrono Trigger. But by and large, it's not a genre that I gravitate towards. Turn-based combat, I think, is just not my jam.
Sure. I'm genuinely shocked by that.
I know.
I don't think back and like remember any turn-based RPGs we've talked about in earnest, but like you just strike me as a JRPG guy for some reason.
I like them in theory, but yeah, just in practice, it's sometimes really hard to like. Like I've tried to start Persona 5 like 100 times.
Yeah.
And I really like a lot of that game. Like I get it, I do. But like it's like the day-to-day things of like, oh god, if I go get coffee with this guy, am I gonna screw my run up? You know, like
yeah.
I think I actually we're perfectionist.
No, I get that. It's funny that you bring up Persona 5. I finally started to transition to what I've been playing. I finally started Persona 5 Royal on my Steam Deck. It's a game that because I'm this irresponsible, I've now bought, I think, twice. In addition to base game Persona 5
is like Persona 5 with like New Game Plus, essentially.
New Game Plus with it, but there's a whole new semester apparently. So it's a pretty big chunk. It's like Persona 4 Gold into Persona 4. It's like the director's cut, as it were.
Why did I say I'm surprised you started that, given that Persona 3 is just around the corner?
So
loaded.
I wouldn't be doing this, and I would be saving myself for Persona 3 Reload if I hadn't played Persona 3 for the first time like 4 months ago.
No kidding. That's so funny because
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I was like literally on the precipice about 4 months ago of playing Persona 3 because I know a lot of people who love that game, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait. Why would I pop this bubble.
Yeah.
When the reboot is coming out, you know.
Yeah, that was a miss on my part. I played it. It was a big whiff. I had played it right when it like the remaster launched, like when they did that 3-pack, where like, oh, it's everywhere now. Like you can get all of them on Switch and PlayStation and whatnot. And I played it then.
Oh, so you played it already?
So I hadn't. That was my first time playing 3, but for some reason I just didn't want to wait for the reload, the remake, and I kind of regret that now. But also, it's like there's so many other things at the moment. It's like in a way, I'm actually kind of happy. So that
got it out of the way.
I got it out of the way, and then now I can go play Reload later. Because also I learned the port that they did last year of Persona 3 is the PSP version, which has
so it's already upscaled a little bit.
But it has where you can choose to play male or female main character, whereas the one that they're remaking, it's the original. It's not so it's only the male characters like that. Also, similarly, like it's not quite as big of a jump from what I looked up. It's not as quite as big of a jump of 4 to golden or 5 to royal. But there is like a little extra dialogue, and like there's a new ending with the female character that a lot of people say is like the canon ending. So then I'm like, ultimately, I'm glad that I did it this way. But
did you play as the female character?
I did. Part of the reason I did it that way was
right, because that makes sense.
But yeah, so I've been doing Persona 5 Royal, but even I loved Persona 5 when it came out. Not as much as 4. And my big
I mean that game oozes style. It's so cool. Like the characters are great. Like I get it.
My biggest criticism of the time when I played 5 was I really wish that it had been a handheld, because that's how I played 4. And I was like, all of this diatribe to loop in what you were saying about the time and the dialogue and stuff. It was like I found myself, especially with like the dungeons, wanting to be like, I would love to just push pause, put my thing to sleep, and walk away. But like it's just such a bigger to do when you're playing it on the TV. So finally playing it on handheld. I'm like a month in, having a great time. But I've found myself fast forwarding through a lot of the gameplay and the dialogue, to be honest, because I'm like, I know this, like I've already.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Not because it's a slog, but because
not because it's a slog. Yeah. But I also, because I've already played the original one time, I'm just doing a straight, give me every step in the guide.
I was gonna say, if you're passing through it again and you're skipping all this dialogue and stuff, are you just like, oh, I just want to hang out with my Persona friends with Ryuji and stuff again, like a comfort watch almost, or
it's a bit of a comfort watch, and also I'm kind of barreling through the content that I know to get to the new stuff. A bit like half an hour.
That's right. I totally you're playing R. Right.
But I've also, Evan, been playing The Last of Us 2 Remastered, and in fact, I have a little review to share. Yeah, so Friday, if you missed it, the VOD is up now on Twitch. It's going to be on YouTube later this week. I streamed for the first time The Last of Us Part 2 No Return mode. And for those that have missed the news, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered that just came out on Friday. It included... Yeah.
When did Last of Us 2 come out?
July 2020 or June 2020.
Does it feel soon to have a remaster?
It does. My first takeaway was I don't notice a single difference between the base game and this game.
Like it's just a port, right? Like at this point,
they're saying there's like certain graphical things that have been tweaked, and they're like, but like it looks the exact same to me.
I have a real issue with this being called a remaster.
Yeah, honestly, I really think that this should have been called Director's Cut.
That would it solves everybody's issue.
Which is weird because like they've set the precedent with what is it? The Kojima game, Death Stranding, and also Ghost of Tsushima. They released Director's Cuts for both of those games,
especially
with new
for
content.
Are these kind of like, I don't want to say art house but these kind of AAA games that are kind of in a lot of ways mimicking the movie thing, right?
Yeah.
This is the poster child for that. I think when I think of movies that are like, or games that are like trying to kind of embody movies, this is it, you know?
Right. And like,
so it feels like the conversation's already there.
It's weird too, because also part of the remaster included a thing called Lost Levels, which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're a TLU stan like I am, which is 3 levels that were cut from the game and they're in this game in like various states of completion.
Yeah,
With
like the old Pixar like blooper
yeah,
reels. Yeah,
it's honestly it's outside of no return mode, which I'm going to get to, which is going to kind of be the beef of my review.
Yeah.
The Lost Levels thing is so fucking cool. I
That
was such a geek for it.
so
Like,
into that. I'm so into that. I would be so
yeah,
into like a director's commentary. I would love just
yeah,
like, I don't know, the ins and outs of games, right? Like,
for sure.
especially taking advantage of the ways that games are unique, right? And these are technically in a lot of places playable, right? Like,
For sure.
it's cool to see the documentary of like, and this is what we did, and this is how we made Mario jump. But like, show me like, you know, these levels that didn't quite pan out that you have these ideas for. Yeah,
And they nail it. It's so cool. There's a little intro that you can.
What a great concept.
It's a great concept. There's a little intro leading into each of the levels from the game director, Neil Druckmann. It's like, this is the idea behind the level. This is why it was cut. This is like the state that it's in. Like, this one's not going to have audio. This one, like, and they're very clear about like, this is why it was cut and this is what to expect. One of them is like the one that's the most close to have been done looks pretty similar to how the base game looks. But then there's one that's like you can tell
it's like
it is
blocks and stuff.
Yeah. Like it's
awesome.
really kind of,
do they talk about why it gets cut? Like why
they do.
Why did this? Very cool.
It's awesome. Like,
I'm so
I
into
love
that.
it. I highly recommend if you love the game, go do the Lost Levels. And like, if you don't want to spend the $10 to
honestly,
get
I'm pretty medium. I never played. I love the first Last of Us. I never played the sequel. Some of the critiques I heard about it, and maybe this isn't fair to just let other people's, thoughts on the game and impart on me, but that stuff felt like, not saying it would ruin the game for everybody. In fact, probably far from it, but like my particular grievances with games and stuff, I'd feel like I might be graded on a little bit by it. But,
sure.
But I don't know. I haven't played it.
Yeah, I think
I might check it out because of this.
Yeah, and also, so on top of the Lost Levels, there's also director's commentary. There's like a director's commentary track over all of the cutscenes in the game, which they did in the first game too, in the remaster for the first game. But it's like in the scene, it'll be like a various voices, either like Druckmann or Hallie Gross, the writers, or the actors on camera then, and like they'll just talk about like the process and struggles that they had and like what they were thinking during things. And I love that shit. Like I eat that kind of shit up.
Me too. I think it's fascinating, and we don't get enough. Like, there is, I think, the biggest removal of like creators to I think about this because I'm a card game fan, right?
Yeah.
And in like the movie world, you have actors who do press conferences and like directors, writers, right? TV shows, you have the same. Like, there's a very particularly like through Twitter and social media, you have a lot of people who talk about their work. But video games and card games too don't really have that face to face kind of thing. And like I certainly don't think the industry does any favors by saying like, hey, here we have this big prestigious game show award. Here's, Anthony Mackie telling everyone to shut up for 14 minutes or whatever, instead of like letting the people who are behind the game, the creatives behind the games, right, talk about their work.
Right.
So very often you don't get even platforms for it, I think.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, big fan of what they're doing with this. And then also, so the new, whoops, I just fucked that up. Outside of the Lost Levels and commentary is this new roguelike mode, which I streamed on Friday, called No Return. And it is fucking incredible. I can't stop playing this game.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
It's a roguelike experience for that. It's just, we took the Last of Us kind of theme and mechanics and we just made it a roguelike.
Essentially. So the way it works, each run, you have to get through 6 encounters, and the encounters can vary in terms of like the faction you're going against. And then there's also 4 game modes. One of them is Assault. It's just like survive 3 waves of enemy X.
Yeah.
There's one called Hunted, which is they're going to just keep coming at you. It's like a survival mode. Yeah, exactly. There's a mode called Capture, which is there's a safe somewhere in the level being guarded. You have to get to it and open it within a certain time period. And then there's one called Holdout, which it puts you with a partner in the game. and you have to keep them alive. And so like there'll be like an influx of certain enemy types, and you just have to make sure that they don't die.
Is it an online thing? Like when you say
it is not
with a partner? Okay.
Within the game, The Last of Us Part 2, think of The Last of Us 1 where it's Joel and Ellie.
Yeah.
Like you have an Ellie with you.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And so yeah, so you go through, and then within each encounter, it randomizes certain mods, things like the enemies move faster, or there's like heavy fog, or one of my personal favorites because it's fucking insane. It's raining Molotovs. Like there's just fucking fire coming down all the time.
Hell yeah!
So it's very arcade.
Fun. Yeah,
it is, dude. It is so much fun. I have not.
This seems like a victory lap for the game, and I'm so into that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I've had that. I'm trying to think of a similar game because I think there is one that I played. I want to say maybe it's a Sonic game or something, but I can't recall. Where it was just like, all right, cool. You guys had the game, and now here's like our bonus game with like,
yeah.
I don't know if it was the Sonic game. Maybe it's like, we put Super Sonic in all of these levels. Guy, who cares? Go nuts. You know, like something like that, right? I don't know. I don't recall exactly, but something like that where it's just like, after you've played a couple of pickup games and you're just like throwing Hail Marys to each other or whatever, like you're just screwing around a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's illuminated two things for me. So often Last of Us Part 2 is in my top 5. I'm just a huge sucker for The Last of Us. If you watch the show, you know this.
Is that not number 1?
I like the first one more.
I see. Yeah. I thought you were. I guess I was mistaken.
As a franchise, though, yes.
Yeah,
it's my favorite franchise.
Naturally.
And something that I always say about The Last of Us, and my kind of like my takeaway with Part 2 is, I think the story is expertly done, and it's very much like a narrative. And No Return has highlighted to me just how much I love the combat of The Last of Us Part 2.
Interesting.
So the way the meta narrative, as it were, is you're just like unlocking things. So you can ultimately play as 10 different characters, like one of each faction. There's like the Ellie faction and the Abby faction, and you have certain challenges for each of these characters, and each character has a different build. So like Abby, very melee focused. She gets health on melee kills, so it very much
just cast live action. Did you guys talk about that?
Yeah,
by the way?
We did. Yeah, and then Dina, as an example, is very traps focused. So like she gets a bonus by crafting traps and using traps. So it's like each character really tries to get you to play a specific way. One of the characters, like, you can't dodge, so it's very much like a tank. And it's just, and each of those characters has certain challenges, like use X guns certain ways, or get through a run by doing this 5 times or whatever. And it's just like this kind of rinse and repeat nature of it. And there's 6 different bosses. So the way it works is like, once you get through one run, kill boss 2, you unlock boss 2, or kill boss 1, you now unlock boss 2. Once you kill boss 2, you unlock boss 3, etc. So I just finally finished the last boss before we went live here. So now it's like randomizing the bosses each time I do the run. But I'm having such a fun time with it. My one critique of this game mode, and it's the second thing that really illuminated for me, is while this has really shown me how much I love The Last of Us 2's combat, it also really highlights how much it's missing when there is simply no dialogue. It feels sterile. Like as I was mentioning, like there are times when you play like with a partner character, and like how easy would it have been to just be like, the run ends, you win the encounter, and it's like, thanks, Jesse, like something simple like that. But like they just like don't talk.
A unique interaction, like I don't know, if you have these 10 characters and some of them are escorts, right? Like at the beginning of a fighting game or something, when they have like in Mortal Kombat, when it's like, Sub-Zero's here, and Sub-Zero's like, I'm gonna chill you, Scorpion. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's like a nice little touch that like, and like really adds a lot sometimes. Right.
And if the AI happens to match you with like someone in the other faction, maybe it's like there's like a heated tension like
thing. It's like we're done after this.
Right. Don't expect my help again.
That
shit, honestly, I think would have elevated this so much for me, because
the juice would have been way worth the squeeze.
It's so often you finish the run and it's just like, it just feels lifeless. But that's like literally my only critique of this.
I'm not shocked by that, given kind of what my understanding of the like thing itself is. That it's like, hey, we had all these assets and we can do this, so we're going to. So I'm not shocked that it lacks a little of like maybe not everyone was free or something like that.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't hire writers, and also,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I does that mean you still should have? Probably, yeah. But
Probably. Yeah.
I'm not totally shocked that it doesn't have that level of polish.
Yeah,
At least
I've missed
aside from the gameplay.
Exactly. Yeah, I've missed some chats coming in. We got John in the chat. He says Pat loves the combat when he remembers the buttons. For those of you that tuned in on Friday, the first like 45 minutes is like, what are the buttons to this game? But I tell you what, I'm really considering streaming this again tomorrow night.
Your favorite game, your top 5 favorite game you couldn't remember the controls for?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just
I
checking.
play a lot of video games.
Not judging, just noticing.
Yeah, for sure. No, I noticed myself. I kept doing this thing where I was like, I'm trying to reload, but I just like swing the bat. I'm like, fuck. But I'm gonna probably stream this again tomorrow night, and you guys will see a night and day difference between Friday stream and tomorrow stream because I've been training, I've been hitting the gym, I've been pumping the iron, and I've now completed 8 runs of No Return. I've died probably double that, but I think I won 3 in a row earlier. So I'm like, I'm feeling good. Like I'm feeling good about certain builds and things like that. There's one mode, and I'll play it on stream if it comes up tomorrow. But there's one mod rather that turns enemies invisible. Fuck that shit.
Yeah,
fuck that is not fun.
I don't see myself having a good time doing that.
Simply not fun. But yeah, so Last of Us Remastered Part 2, remastered. If you like the first game, you want to, what I've said about No Return gets you jazzed. $10, it's going to unlock on your PS5. Go play it, have a good time. If you don't want to, come watch me stream it tomorrow night, or I guess if you're not watching live, this was last night. The VOD is up. But yeah, Last of Us Remastered Part 2. I would give this a 5 out of 5 because it's still The Last of Us Part 2. Like
I was gonna say,
and it just has more shit,
more stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a must play.
Director's
according to me.
I would give it a 4.5 because Remastered is duplicitous and wrong.
I agree.
And quite frankly, evil that they would call it.
I don't knock you. I don't disagree. Let's move on to talk about a little game called,
speaking of malicious,
Palworld. Speaking of malicious. So Palworld is a game that if you haven't heard about it, I'd be shocked. This launched last week in early access, a very big kind of caveat with all of the conversation today that's in early access, but it launched on PC, Xbox, and it's on Game Pass on both. And this thing's a fucking juggernaut. So I'm first pulling from Wesley Yin, pulled IGN. He writes, Palworld's astonishing launch success has grown further. It's now the second most popular game ever on Steam. Palworld posted an incredible 1.85 million concurrent players on Steam today, January 23rd, a figure that sees Pocket Pair's controversial Pokemon with guns crafting and survival game overtake Valve's own Counter-Strike, according to the Stream DB. Palworld, then, is second only to PUBG, whose remarkable stream concurrence peak of 3.25 million was set during the game's glory days. Probably not going to beat that. No. But honestly, you never know.
It was also free, which I don't know if Palworld is or not. I think Palworld is not free.
It is not free unless you have Game Pass. But
yes,
which it has sold 6 million copies in just 4 days. It launched on the 19th, like I said, on Xbox consoles and PC via Stream and Windows, or Steam and Windows. And so that 6 million sales doesn't count also the people just playing it for free on Game Pass.
Yeah,
this thing's a fucking juggernaut.
Two things I'd like to point out about. Well, yeah, I guess 3. Puts into perspective truly how big it's like the game it is aping of Pokemon, where Pokemon will often reach like 15 something million in sales or something like that in the first week. Not that Pokemon needs like to be put over or anything, but like, wow, those games are like impossibly big. To think that like the biggest game on Steam, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, for sure,
crazy.
Because I think another kind of interesting thing to add to that is when you look at like the big PlayStation games. I don't remember the exact number. If someone in the chat wants to get me some accuracy here, but like the first 3 days of God of War Ragnarok was like 3 million. And then Spider-Man didn't even break 4 million. 2 of the biggest launches in PlayStation's history.
Absolutely.
And so that 6 million already within 4 days is insane.
Nuts.
So before we kind of get into the controversy side of all of this, you've played a little bit, I've played a little bit. How many hours roughly have you put in, and what are your general thoughts so far?
2 to 3. So when I first saw this game on like previewed, I'm a pretty big Pokemon fan. I have a lot of gripes with kind of where the series is at, like most Pokemon fans these days do, which kind of tie into my thoughts on this game. But I saw the trailer for this game, and I was like, I hate this so much on principle, and I'm for sure going to be playing it. Right? Like, like I just knew that despite the fact that I'm like, man, this is just like something a shitty, like cynical 12-year-old would make me like, wouldn't it be funny if Pokemon was guns? Which it's super lame. I also, as a Pokemon fan, like most of us, really just want a competent, fun, interesting Pokemon game that's matured a little bit with us. It doesn't. Yeah. I wish it wasn't this like lame, like what if Pikachu had an AR-15? But like, man, something that's a little more, I don't know, playable, a little more engaging, a little more interesting, a little more action-oriented, perhaps. And from that, I am enjoying it, right? Like something I'm pleased to announce and was pleased to discover is that the guns aspect of it, at least where I'm at, maybe this changes way later, and it probably does like very deep into the game, way oversold.
Way oversold. I agree.
Way oversold. And I've been saying this too, that like if you had swapped the like realistic guns for like Ratchet and Clank, like the Zapamator or something, and you're shooting Pokemon with that, like I'm pretty into that. I think that's pretty cool, you know? Like, I don't know. I'm enjoying the game more than I expected to. I expected to enjoy it a little bit, but like I think some of the designs are pretty charming, even when we'll talk later, I assume. Some of those designs are maybe a little close to the apple didn't fall that far from the tree, perhaps. But like it's a fun crafting survival game, which is a genre that I'm not usually crazy about. So putting like some monsters and cutesy dudes in it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the
John in the chat,
very little to do with the game itself, I think.
For sure. John in the chat corrected me a little bit. God of War sold 5.1 million in its first week. So a little bit more and a little bit more time, but still, like this is within a few days, almost a million more than that. Is crazy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for me, I've put in about 3 to 4, so a little bit more than you.
Yeah.
And John in the chat, he's pushing 20 hours. Most damage comes from the pals. The melee and guns do minimal damage.
Great. See, that's awesome. I'm very excited to hear that the marketing was just to drum up interest, which was very successful at doing.
Oh, for sure. For me, so you had texted me before I had started saying like, I'm surprised at how survival forward this is. Even knowing that, I was still surprised at how this really is. Like I've heard a lot of people say it's not Pokemon with guns, it's Ark but Pokemon.
That's a way better description. You don't have the same tropings of Pokemon. Like you're not picking a starter, you're not going on a journey and suddenly everybody's there and evil and you have to shoot them, which is I think kind of what a lot of people, myself included, thought it might be. But really, it's really more just like a survival like Ark game that has Pikachu with it.
Right. And like the battle systems are so different than Pokemon. It really is just like an aesthetic thing.
Pretty rudimentary too. Like the battles, I was a little disappointed by.
Pretty disappointed in that. But a few things that I do really like. I think the art style is really charming, and I also think I'm so fascinated by this concept, which maybe is bad, but I'm fascinated by this concept of catch these things and then make them work for you.
I think here's the thing. I had a professor in college once who said, you are every age you are at the same time. So if there's a game that you're like, all right, I can recognize this is shitty and immature, but 15-year-old Patrick's all about it. Like, hell yeah, why not?
Yeah. You know? But it's cool that, so you're building this base, you're chopping down trees for wood, you're pickaxing rocks for stone, and you're using those materials to build like beds and devices that help you build other things and like little farm patches. And then when you catch these pals, if they have a certain skill like tree chopping or like if they're a water a water pal, they can water your farm for you, or they can pick your farm for you. So like you can essentially choose the different pals in your base to like run your base for you, which is really attractive to me because ultimately I don't love a survival game. And if they're going to give me the tools to say, hey, you don't have to do a lot of surviving, once you have the right tools, it'll just kind of work itself out. All about
you're building an engine. You're not building a thing you have to keep sustaining.
Right. Then I could see myself playing this game for a lot longer. But if I'm like 10, 12, 15 hours in and I'm still very much like, I'm still fucking chopping trees, I'm still doing the survival side of it, I probably won't stick around at that point. Terry in the chat asks,
story to speak of?
So far, I've not seen any story.
I guess that's
John
a question
could
for
help us
Rabbit
out.
in the chat.
Yeah. John Rabbit 128 in the chat. If you could let us know, like, is there any story or is it just vibes? And then Terry in the chat says, is the controversy that you can catch pals or catch people in addition to pals? So that's part of the controversy.
I think that's lame. I personally.
Right. But let's get into the controversy. So this is part two.
The controversy is on a much bigger level, I think.
Much bigger level.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling from Andy Robinson at VGC.
Like, not anything that's happening in game, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the making of the game.
Correct.
So Palworld Pokemon plagiarism accusations pile up as CEO responds. Artists accuse it of copying 3D models. Pocket Pair claims it's received death threats and abuse. This is the article on VGC. The director of Steam's colossal breakout hit Palworld has responded to allegations of plagiarism as accusations mount that the game could have copied Pokemon's designs. Since launching into early access on PC and Xbox on Friday, numbers. However, the survival game's success ignited discourse around perceived similarities between its characters' designs and those of the Pokemon games. Although the actual gameplay of Palworld is vastly different from Nintendo's series, debate has raged on social media around the obvious influence its characters' designs have taken from Pokemon and whether it could be interpreted as plagiarism. The CEO talks about how, like, we're receiving death threats. That's not cool.
I would agree with that.
Which is not cool. Even if they did plagiarize this shit, like, these are people, don't fucking do that.
Don't send death. Also, like, if they're plagiarizing it, then the law will get them.
Right.
You don't have to be Nintendo's,
Exactly. And then
you don't have to go to bat for the world's biggest media franchise. They are fine. I assure you. And I love Polytoad as much as the next guy, probably more. He's fine. Yeah,
it's fine. And also I've heard some takes which I seem to align with, of like, this game has been out in the ether for months. I'd be pretty shocked if the Pokemon Company wasn't already over this with lawyers. But maybe not. But so to continue on the article a little bit, however, the accusations against Palworld took another turn on Sunday when an anonymous X account appeared claiming to show evidence of not just design inspiration, but plagiarism of actual game assets. User Bio posted several videos comparing Palworld's in-game 3D models to those of Pokemon and claimed to show evidence that they were likely copied. While none of the half-dozen models compared by the X user appear to be one-to-one copies, they claim to have their proportions that were nearly identical to Pokemon models exported from Switch, Scarlet, and Violet games. And according to two experienced AAA game artists who spoke to VGC, the model comparisons on X are likely evidence that Palworld's character models were indeed based on Pokemon assets. One of them said, quote, "You cannot in any way accidentally get the same proportions on multiple models from another game without ripping them, or at the very least, tracing them meticulously first. I would stand in court to testify as an expert on this." So, like, there are certainly experts in this field being like, hey, this is certainly plagiarism.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think, copyright law is such a fickle thing. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert in any stretch of the imagination. You can.
I'm an expert. That's why I'm here on the show as the show's legal expert, as the Spotlight Games lawyer.
Yes, we're bringing in legal counsel.
Yes,
Evan Brando. But
I bill for every episode just in case I'm needed.
Exactly. From what I'm reading from some lawyer voices out there, it doesn't seem like there will be a lot that they can do unless they can prove that they just straight up stole from the game. That is its own thing.
Thoughts on this are suing someone over, like, some of these Pokemon or these pals look like they are blatantly ripped off of Pokemon. I feel like it would set a pretty dangerous precedent. Unless there is, like, again, we're taking the exact models and the exact things that were right. Like, that's a different thing. We're setting a pretty dangerous precedent if we let Pokemon or whatever say, well, that looks an awful lot like our thing. It's not our thing, but it looks an awful lot like ours. Shut it down. And it's like, I feel like that would be horrible, because then where's the line, right?
Right.
Like, and that becomes objective, and I am not comfortable with that at all, personally.
Agreed. And also, legal team. Right. Thank you, legal counsel, Evan Brando. And also the other kind of part of it that this article doesn't go into is that there's concerns that some of these were that, they stole the assets and then threw them into AI and AI gave them back.
Right. That's the other part.
Which, if that's the case, it's not a copyright issue. because you can't copyright anything created in AI. So it's like, I just don't see the like legal ramification of it either way. Like the only, I think, monetary thing that could happen is if people are like, on a moral ground, I'm not going to play a game because of AI.
Which
There's
is fine.
that, which is fine.
You as the consumer, that is totally your right. And
right.
you know, if I'm not totally opposed to people saying, hey, I don't really want to support an AI project.
For sure. Terry in the chat asks an interesting question. Would it be safe to categorize this as parody? Aren't there protections for that? There are. I watched a video. There's a channel called MinMax. They have a lawyer on their staff.
Much like you, much like Spotlight Games,
much like us with Evan right here. Right. And I watched that video, which was really interesting. And she talked about like the 4 kind of things that go into copyright law, and how you can like sue and things like that. And one of the things that she talked about was like parody. And she essentially was like, there's no way that you could make the argument that this is parody, because
parody has to be like a pretty direct send up, right? Like it has to be like, you have to be saying like, it's Pikachu and we are critiquing the thing.
Exactly.
Right? Because I remember when I was having to
in law school.
When I was in law school, having to navigate like the FCC and stuff like that. There were rules like, especially early on in podcasting and things like that, was like can you play clips of songs and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And the answer was sort of, right? If you are talking about the songs and things like that, like if you're providing commentary on them, then yeah, you can, but you can't just be like, and we'll be right back and then play a Metallica song. Right. You know, like that would be illegal without commenting on like, hey, who is this? You're not adding something to it. So much like that, I think parody law has to acknowledge that it is, like it has to be pretty beyond a shadow of a doubt that like, hey, this is Pokemon. Like when Mad Magazine makes, I don't know, Pikachu or Piscachu or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's clearly Pikachu that is now pissing. Right. It's not like right. So
or the easy example is Spaceballs, like with Darth Helmet. Like
I like Piscachu personally.
Piscachu is pretty good. And it's more relevant to this conversation.
But yes, I think Spaceballs is a great example. Yeah.
I think I'm so fascinated to see where this all lands, because we've never really seen anything to this level and B to this degree on such a grand scale. Because and like what you had said, you used the word precedent, like that. If this does end up going a legal route, that's going to be so fascinating. If this ends up setting like a precedent for AI law or copyright law, like I don't know that it'll get to that point, but it'd be really fascinating if fucking Palworld set legal precedents.
There's tons of like things like Palworld out there. Palworld is certainly not the first of its kind. I mean, even like Minecraft mods, right? Have like there's tons of Pokemon things you can do in that, right? But this is just, it's never been at this size, level, whatever, popularity before. So like, that's really what's going to spur the conversation, I think.
Yeah.
Like these numbers are historic and can't really be ignored. So like Nintendo is going to have to respond somehow, right? Whether that is in the court of law or saying, hey, this is cool, we're not doing anything about it. Like, which I think is what ultimately they're going to have to do.
Yeah.
Even if they had any interest in suing, which I doubt.
I doubt they do. But there's also another interesting piece of it where if Pokemon were to see profit loss because of this, and if they I mean, that's the tricky part. If they could
prove
attest it, if they could prove that Palworld cost them sales, then they could certainly take legal action.
Sure, but like I think Palworld kind of releasing the right now, like might even be strategic, because we are in a Pokemon drought right now. DLC came out a few months ago, and we have no new Pokemon games on the horizon. So I
probably not this year.
Probably not this year. I'd be shocked. Maybe towards the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if we got some sort of.
Do you think, to kind of wrap this conversation up with Pokemon, do you think if we do get Switch 2 this year, they might launch with like a Hey You Pikachu?
That's probably this is most likely. My prediction is we're going to get Switch 2, and it's maybe going to be not a launch title, but like shortly after launch title, it's going to be a new Pokemon thing, whatever.
Cool.
I don't think it's going to be a new generation. I think it's going to be closer to like a Hey You Pikachu, Hey You Eevee, or maybe an Arceus like side game. I don't know. But it's
Hey You Pikachu, but in the Johto world.
Yeah, or Let's Go Pikachu. Hey You Pikachu was the N64 one with the where you were the voice of God and you yelled at Pikachu to do things.
Let's Go Johto.
You have no idea how bad I would be into that. I think they'd probably do it differently because the like Pokemon Go thing is kind of faded.
Sure.
But
we'll see. Only one way to find out, and that's to wait, Evan. Let's wrap up the show. I say wrap up. We're probably going to be here for another 30 minutes.
Hell yeah, baby.
Last week, Xbox released another developer underscore direct. I don't know if we're supposed to say the underscore, but it's there. So
I think we should say it.
I think we should
pronounce it hard.
A hard underscore.
Yeah.
With
Don't say it like that.
No. Oh God. Cut it. Take it back. Avowed.
As a show's legal team.
As the legal team. Avowed, Senua Saga, Hellblade 2, Visions of Mana, Aura, History Untold, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle were the 5 games that they showed. So we're going to kind of talk through those, react to those. So that started off, Evan, with Avowed coming from Obsidian.
Real quick. First of all, I do not think this is enough content for a whole direct. Maybe I'm spoiled as a Nintendo fan.
Sure.
But 5 games?
So it's interesting.
One of which we've already seen.
Let's talk about it. Let's start by talking about the general vibes. This is the second time they've done this. And the first time they showed us, I think 5 games, then maybe 4. And that's when they shadow dropped. What was the rhythm game from last year?
Gosh.
What's it
I really
called?
like that game. The main character name was
Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush.
This when the first one is when they shadow dropped Hi-Fi Rush. And it's different from a Nintendo Direct in that it's a lot of interviews with developers while showing gameplay, talking over it, like talking over B-roll and kind of talking about like inspiration and things like that. So, kind of going back to the Last of Us conversation, they're kind of giving us a peek behind the curtain of development while also showing us the game. That part of it I do really enjoy. I think it's a really, when you compare it to the Nintendo Direct, when you compare it to the PlayStation State of Play, it kind of has started to carve its own corner within these presentations, which I appreciate.
Kind of now that I'm saying it out loud, I will back down from my like Nintendo fan fence post here or soapbox, because there's a lot of crap in those that are sometimes, I don't need to see every farming sim that's coming to
for sure,
guys, so there's something for that too.
For sure. And so now the precedent that they have set is we're getting 1 a year. I'm sure. Actually, no, they did 2 last year. They did a Starfield only developer direct. So never mind.
Wow.
And that was like 45 minutes of just Starfield.
45 minutes of Starfield. Oh,
something
God.
Like that. That was a really deep dive into Starfield.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I like the vibe, and I'd like to see more developer underscore directs. But ultimately,
I like when game announces are an occasion.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. And we don't always need the like on a press conference stage. I'm Phil Spencer, and I'm here to talk. But like, we don't always need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's go through and talk about
Maybe
the game.
I'm being a hypocrite though, because I earlier in the podcast was saying how we need to platform these creators a little bit more.
That's true.
Give them more of an opportunity to talk about their games. God, I am inconsistent, Evan. Come on, man.
We need to. We're going to take this to the top of the lawyer chain.
Shut him down.
Shut him down. So the first game they showed was Avowed, being made by Obsidian. This is what the Xbox Wire has to say about Avowed, and then we're going to tell you our thoughts. Avowed game director Carrie Patel gave us a first deep dive into the gameplay in Obsidian's upcoming fantasy action RPG, from its dynamic combat to its thoughtful reactivity to its colorful, vibrant, strange world set in the living lands.
Do love the colors in this game. That was
the
thing that really stood out to me. Was we've all played Skyrim, we've all played Oblivion. I feel like Oblivion way better than Skyrim. Sorry, #sorry not sorry. But like, I don't know, a first-person RPG. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of been said and done.
Yeah,
and I don't really know what's left in that category.
Sure,
just seeing them go wider and do weirder things, particularly games with color, because I feel like games really lack a lot of color these days.
Yeah.
Which is part of, I've alluded to being a Nintendo fan. Part of why I'm a Nintendo fan is those games are just colorful.
Yeah, for sure.
In ways that fucking God of War is not. And I like God of War. I do. I'm not coming for it.
That was true. Well, I will say Ragnarok, a lot more colorful.
Absolutely. That is true. That is
true.
Absolutely true.
But yeah, like Starfield, fucking browns and grays all the live long day.
Right.
So not only will you make narrative decisions that can impact changes in the game down the line, but Avowed is also looking to offer choice in combat. Gameplay director Gabe Paramo discussed not only how varied your weaponry will be with melee weapons, ranged guns, and bows, and magic-based wands, even dual-wielded wands, to name a few, but how flexible combat can be. That looked awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
The dual wielding of wands looked really cool.
Yeah, it did.
And how it seemed like a lot of the combat carried a lot of weight, which I feel like sometimes these first person, it didn't look sluggish,
which a lot of the Skyrim ones sometimes feel.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes exactly.
Yep.
And it feels like a lot of the time it doesn't feel like you're really connecting. And like this game, it feels like there's
It looks like
they've
they're
really
hitting those
made
guys.
strides. Exactly. It feels like they've really made strides in this like first person magic type combat, which I'm very excited for. This is a game that, you know, I played the Outer Worlds when that launched a few years ago.
I like the Outer Worlds.
I liked it. It was fine. It was a solid game.
Yeah.
Like it was a game that if you have time is worth playing, but I wouldn't tell you to like go drop everything to go play the game. So I'm hoping that Avowed can get us back to that like top tier Obsidian Fallout New Vegas type game.
Yeah.
With a narrative, because as we've alluded to, Starfield wasn't it. And I feel we're not going to be getting Elder Scrolls 6 probably while I'm alive.
2027 is my guess.
Maybe. And so I'm excited for Avowed. Ultimately, I really liked what they showed of Avowed. After that, we got Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Ninja Theory took us behind the scenes at their studio in Cambridge to take a look at Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, meet some of the team, and learn more about the craft behind their new title, which is now in the final months of development. In the video, we learned more about Senua's new journey, which leads her to Iceland, a harsh and brutal land ravaged by myth and tyranny. We were given a new look at Senua's experiences of the world, seen through her eyes as someone who experiences psychosis, and saw some of Senua's visceral and violent battles with the Draugr. I'm going to pull up B-roll here.
I did not play this game, the first one. It is friend of the pod, Robot Giggles is probably her favorite game, if I recall correctly, and she's recommended it to me a zillion times, but so I know what is good about this game.
Yeah.
I just haven't played it, but I think that like knowing what I know about the first one, a sequel not only well warranted, but like is like a very exciting thing, especially if they utilize like some of the sound stuff that they used in the first
game. This is what I'll say.
Play with that. Yeah.
This was friend of the show, Cognitive Clips, who might still be in the chat. This was his first pick in our Fantasy Critic League. And at the end of last year, I made the prediction that I think it's very possible that this game is like wins multiple Game of the Year awards.
Really?
After seeing this presentation, I am more confident now than I was then.
Wow.
If the combat and like if the game feels like it carries weight and it's not just cutscene after cutscene.
Here I was gonna say, so here's my worry with the game, with any game like this. Think of the games of the years that we had in recent memory, and seldom are they this game.
For sure.
Know what I mean? Seldom, often they are something that is bringing
for sure
totally new to the table. It's your Baldur's Gates, it's your, whatever, right? So I'll be curious. I mean, if it's that good, I'm in. I'm here for it. I would rather something be amazing and mind blowing.
Me too. And the most interesting part of it to me, there was a line that the studio head said, their studio mission of crafting life-changing art with game-changing tech. So very much like behind the idea here and the DNA of this game is bringing new tech to the table for gaming, because this game, I don't know that the B-roll is doing it justice. This game looks unreal visually. Like it looks like if what they're showing us is how the game's actually going to look, this easily looks like it's going to be the most visually stunning game ever.
I was going to say, I think this is the first game I have seen in a long time with like very realistic graphics that I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like that performance that that you just clicked by. I remember watching that at, I think it was the Game Awards, and thinking I was like, this is real. Like this, I thought this was a performance, and it is not.
Yeah.
And that's something I haven't felt since I first watched like Advent Children, where I literally couldn't tell,
Yeah.
And I was obviously much younger, but like still, I don't think that has aged perfectly, but I remember that feeling of like, whoa,
I can't believe they're doing this for sure.
Yeah.
And we got a release date of May 21st, 2024. So even though all of these games were said they're coming out in 2024, I doubt all of them do. This one, I think we can say for certain coming out in 2024. May isn't early enough.
Even if they got to push it a few months, that's like
exactly. But this, it looks really good. This was the highlight of the direct for me. A close second was Indy, which we're going to get to.
I was going to say, I got a lot of thoughts on Indy, baby.
Yeah. So next up was Visions of Mana, which, we've talked about on the show before. We've
pretty excited for it personally.
Before, which, it looks good.
I think this is something I could really sink my teeth into. I like the original.
Yeah, I was about to say, have you played a Mana game before? Because I haven't.
I played the original on the SNES, but I haven't played the remake of it.
Gotcha.
So,
I know Cayman's really stoked for this game. I know Jordan, Cognitive Clips, is really stoked for this game. Doesn't necessarily ring a Patrick game to me, but we'll see.
Is it it's co-op? Is it co-op?
That I don't know.
I think the original, if I recall, the original was.
The little blurb I pulled from Xbox Wire doesn't mention anything about co-op. So
I wonder if
not sure.
Was. Yeah.
But yeah, it looks good. And it seems like for the people that are super interested in this game, they seem to be really happy with it. After this was Aura History Untold, which I'm going to be honest, we're going to skip because we're not a strategy city building battlefield war game audience here. So
the people don't clamor for it.
Not our thing. But it did get a release window of sometime in, I think, fall 2024. So if these games are your thing, I'm sure you've already seen this. And I won't have much to say about it. And then after that, they closed the show with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. The official reveal of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was debuted during develop.
They fucking did it. It looks amazing.
With over 13 minutes of gameplay footage and developer insights, this new journey starring the legendary archaeologist comes from the award-winning team at Machine Games, the minds behind Wolfenstein: The New Order and Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, in collaboration with Lucasfilm Games and executive produced by Bethesda Game Studios' Todd Howard. Hearing him talk about, like, I've had this vision for this game, the time period I want it to be set, and once I knew who could make it, like Machine Games, it was all like steam ahead. I think has me so jacked for this.
That game. They could take inspiration from such big properties like Tomb Raider and Uncharted and create like this wholly new IP. No, it is fun. It is funny to see the kind of inspiration from those games in this series, which are obviously it's like the snake eating its own tail, but in like a good way, right?
Yeah.
Which is it's fascinating. There's an anime I love called Devilman Crybaby, where I saw like a sequence that was from the original Devilman from like I want to say the 70s or the 80s that went on to inspire like 2 or 3 of these other anime, and then the new remake is pulling things from those anime as cool. like homages, and it's like I don't know, it's just cool to see it build on those things.
That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And this reminds me of that in some ways.
Yeah, I was so impressed with this because I know there was a lot of worry about a first-person indie game, and we weren't sure.
Could not believe this was a first person. By the way, can't like I was like this, I'm so excited that it's not third person.
Yeah,
and that's something I didn't even know I wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of people were like, "Man, I'm so shocked it's not third person," but it's like I kind of always felt like this was going to be first person because it's Machine Games. Like they've only ever done first person, and they do it so well.
I just feel like the IP games, like Marvel's Avengers or Spider-Man. Well, I guess all the Marvel games, right? Like every Star Wars game for the most part in recent memory has been a third person like exploration game, and they've all kind of felt the same in a lot of ways. Sure. Not that I haven't liked some of those games, I absolutely have, but I was expecting that sort of like over the shoulder third person camera that a lot of these games end up being.
I think in that opening bit when Todd Howard was talking about like I've been trying to figure out like which developer would be best for this vision, and then he said Machine Games. I was like, which we knew it was Machine Games. Once I heard him say that, I was like, oh, this is absolutely going to be first person because that's what they're good at.
That's what they do. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, like, I certainly don't think that that's a wrong assumption. I just like
for sure
believe it. And like these guys made like the Wolfenstein games and stuff, so they know how to make killing Nazis real
exactly
fun.
Exactly.
But I think it's just very cool.
Yeah, and something too, like it's 99.9% first person, but there are some third person moments, like when you're climbing, when you're there are certain moments where it pans to third person.
You're gonna see indie
exactly, but it's gonna be a first person game. I'm very impressed with this. It says it's coming fall 2024. We'll see if that happens. I kind of don't expect it to. I'm
thinking Christmas launch or November launch. I think tail end. I think they'll get it out for the holidays.
Yeah. John in the chat makes a great point. 2 great points, actually. I bet the storyline is better than the last 2 movies combined, almost guaranteed. And second, first person will differentiate it from Tomb Raider, etc. So like Nathan Drake, like, which I think probably was also part of this because those games, you made the joke, like those games were very much inspired by indie.
They're Indiana Jones. They're like, we couldn't make an Indiana Jones game, so we're making this instead.
Right. So I think it's cool.
Which is great, right?
For sure. So I think that's also a good way to differentiate it. Like,
and
we're going to make this our own.
You don't have anybody talking about, by the way, just to allude to something we were talking about earlier, you don't have anybody being like, well, Spielberg needs to sue Uncharted. You know,
Sure.
Even though he's just Indiana Jones with guns, that's all he is, man.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg.
That's funny that we had a bit of a jinx situation with John in the chat, Indiana Jones with guns.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was, I was really impressed with this. This was kind of one of the biggest question marks for Xbox for me.
For sure.
Until we saw it. So the fact that it looks as good as it does, I really think that like this could be Xbox's year to like really finally turn around some people's kind of mentality and opinion on the game studios.
For it, I think
they have been.
Just because like PlayStation, I feel like has been, at least in the race between, so dominant. Like, I mean, all of the PS4, right? Like since the 360 kind of faded out, PS4 has been like, PlayStation's just been the guy, right? But
I feel like
stuff, the Battle Pass being, I feel like supporting the stuff that isn't like immediately red hot, but will be and could be. Like, for instance, this is, I think you're totally right.
I think this game, or this year rather, is the first time that I'm like genuinely excited about what Xbox is bringing to the table as a whole since like the 360 era.
Yeah.
Which is so exciting. Like I always want everyone to do great.
Yeah,
because that means more better games for us. Like
right.
But yeah, this certainly. Well, okay. So John in the chat asks, "Is this going to be day one Game Pass?" Almost certainly. They've not said, but
without a doubt.
Without a doubt, I think for sure. And then Bennett. Okay, now the guy who was in Evan's dark corner is behind Patrick. This isn't good. This isn't good.
Just bleeding out, crawling his way back into the podcast.
Bennett, did you not tell us that you came up to Atlanta just to sneak up behind us? Naughty boy. But yeah, so that was the developer _ direct. I think
real quick, something
Oh,
sorry. I was just going to say something that I think I wanted to touch on before we moved on from Indiana Jones was why it's kind of a big question mark, you know, that you said earlier, is because like when you get a big IP like this, particularly one that isn't like, doesn't have a history of being adapted, we kind of don't know what to expect, right? Because a lot of games that have big IPs kind of just coast on having the big IP, right?
Sure.
I mean, how many Star Wars games have we played, all of us, that just suck?
Yeah.
That we played anyway because it's fun to have a lightsaber, you know? Like we just like, it's not only what are they going to do with it, but how are they going to like take the franchise or the property, and then like what elements are they going to adapt and bring to the table? What are they going to find? What are they going to focus on? Right? It's so cool, and it's so cool to see those elements. Like this looks like an Indiana Jones game. Not only does it look like Harrison Ford, but it's everything I want from Indie. You know, and it seems like they have a really nice. Like it seems like it's mostly going to be a puzzle game with some action sequences, which is great.
I think of Insomniac doing Spider-Man for Marvel. Like they found the right team to do the right project, and I think we're gonna get a great game out of it, which is super exciting.
Totally.
Terry asks, "Is this Xbox exclusive?" I don't remember off the top of my head if they have explicitly said, but it's gonna be an Xbox exclusive. I would be surprised.
Probably PC, Xbox.
Right, PC, Xbox. I would be surprised if this was one of the games that they're also launching on PlayStation. I think, you know, as part of the Bethesda acquisition, this was one of those things where like, oh, we want Indiana Jones.
I would say it would be months before it would come to a PlayStation. Would be
if it did, if at all, yeah. And there might already be a notice out there saying like, hey, this is Xbox exclusive. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Evan, that's our show.
Hey, hot dog.
I do want to give a quick Fantasy Critic update for those following at home. Today launched. It's a shame that he's not here to speak to it, but Cayman coming out fucking swinging. He had Tekken 8 and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth both sitting at a 90% on Open Critic. So if those scores stand, it's 40 points for him, which is going to be huge. And then Jordan, last week, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown brought him 16 points. So a good start. Those are the only three that have come out this year. But so far, as long as those scores stand for Cayman, he is off to a very strong lead in the Fantasy Critic.
For me, personally. But
yeah, Cayman wins enough on this podcast. He won the predictions for last year. He won the bet of which would sell more, Hogwarts or Zelda. There he is in the chat. That's John. At the Dumpster Boy has Future Sight. He does, yeah. He bet that Hogwarts would outsell Tears of the Kingdom, and I said
that's a bummer to me.
And it did. But it actually, it's the first game in 15 years that isn't it's Call of Duty and another franchise. I can't remember the other franchise, maybe like FIFA or something, but it's been Call of Duty and one other franchise. It's the first time in 15 years it wasn't one of those two games being the highest selling game of the year.
I have so many thoughts, all like Three Stooges trying to get out of my brain of like, wow, what a shame that such a boring looking game that is like created by a turf is like so celebrated and so sold. Like, how terrible. But also like, this is what happens when you give people what they want.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like thinking about that in like terms of Pokemon and how Palworld success is like Palworld is kind of giving people what they want for Pokemon.
100%.
You know, like obviously,
it's a very interesting thing of like, the truth is there's 6 million people that have bought Palworld. I'm willing to bet 98% of them, maybe more, have no idea about the controversy behind Palworld.
Oh,
they just saw a fun looking game. They saw a TikTok about it. They saw someone.
That's probably, Patrick, that's probably what it was, is the billion TikToks about Pokemon with guns. It's like, well, they like Pokemon a lot, but it's also like having that gun thing, I think, lets people who would otherwise maybe buy Pokemon or play Pokemon say, well, I can play Pokemon now because it's got guns. And it's, you know, like people who are like our age, maybe, who like still kind of like it in their heart of hearts, but like can't because that's for babies and kids. You know?
Exactly.
Right. Obviously, we don't have that problem here, but there are definitely people who do.
But hey, and that's why shows like Spotlight Games exist, to have these conversations, to talk about the controversy of Palworld. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Evan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. What a great time.
Quite the pinch hit, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, well, anytime.
Since you're here, is there anything at home that you want to, or is it for the folks at home, is there anything that you want to plug, anything social wise that you want to tell them about?
Oh gosh, sure. I do a show called Cineprob in Atlanta, which if you are local to Atlanta, please come see it. We do it the third Thursday of every month at Round Trip Brewing. We do a mystery movie, which is any movie we want, and we have to say it's a mystery movie for legal purposes. I will definitely pull that curtain back, and which is great though. It's a great, perfect thing. So we can do, say a certain movie about Twilight or that takes place in
Forks, Washington.
So yeah, right, Forks, Washington, about vampires and stuff. But we can maybe riff that and make fun of that this month or next month. And also, I've started doing cartoons and stuff on my Instagram at Evan Brandonicio. If you are interested in that kind of thing, it's pretty fun.
They're so good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If you're not following him on Instagram and you like little fun cartoons,
I do little fun cartoons.
They're great. They're fucking great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a great
I always try to throw you just like weird curveballs.
Oh yeah, I think I have one. Do I have one sitting in my? Because often I'll do the real reason to do it is every week or so I'll do like a hey, tell me anything to draw and I'll draw it. Yeah. And Patrick always says
my this week's suggestion was the American Psycho business card scene, but
I want to get to that one. That's a great one.
So that'll be fun. If you want to follow the pod, if you're not already, you can follow us on Twitter at Spot Games Pod. Everywhere else, including TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, we are at Spotlight Games Pod. Tomorrow night, if you're live, we're going to be streaming The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, No Return, probably 8 o'clock. I haven't decided on a time, but probably 8. We'll be back next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Until then, don't forget,